Stephanie with Altogether Beautiful. I wanted to come on today to continue with our series of Storyteller. This week in particular, spending a lot of time online, right? Lots of screen time. And I noticed that our follow culture, right? Like the Instagram culture, the first thing I look at when I go to somebody's page is how many followers they have. And it's like before I would even look to see what they're about or maybe what their initiative was, I would just sort of base my value on how many people, other people like them. And I was like, okay, I know that we all do that, right? But there's this idea of like the word follower really is like it's so closely attached to Christian. Like, are you a Christ follower, right? Do you follow Christ? Or I follow Christ. It's like when we introduce ourselves to people. And the way that he did not live that way, right? So he wasn't like, hey, how many people are out there? Or the Bible talks a lot about how many people were following Jesus that day or how big the crowd was. But he wasn't, and it also talks about after Jesus spoke, his love drew people in, but his truth also, people went away. People stopped following him because some of the things he was saying were hard to swallow, right? And so one of my favorite scriptures for a different reason, I think is in all four Gospels, but particularly in the book of Luke, where they're saying people were coming out to hear Jesus speak, and there were so many followers. And then he got into weird stuff, right? So he got into, you have to be born again. And he started talking about eating his flesh and drinking his blood. And people are like, this guy is weird, ew. And it said at that time, many of his followers deserted him. And then he turned to his 12 and he was like, are you going to leave too? And then Peter, this is my favorite line of Peter's, he was like, where would I go? I always say this, but that's another video. It's like a 10-year-old who's like, I'm running away from home, and then they're outside for 5 minutes and they come back in. Where am I going to go? Where am I going to go? You are my father, right? You're my protector. You're my everything. Why? Even if I wanted to leave, where would I go? So this idea of followers, I think it's really important for us to really look at how Jesus viewed his followers. He did not want, his intention wasn't to say, well, we have 5,000. How can we have 6,000 tomorrow? He was okay with people walking away. He almost expected it. And that's so countercultural right now. So that leads me to my second point. I think that oftentimes there's this pressure, right? When you meet people or when you want to know what they're about or what's your story, it's like, well, what do you do? What are your plans? What are your future goals? That's all fine. But I often go back to a scripture in the book of James that actually talks about self-confidence. And it's really short. I'm just going to read it to you real quick. Also, my Bible's falling apart. I think it's a good thing, but I have to get some duct tape because I don't know. It's literally about to fall apart. Okay, so it says a warning about self-confidence. Look here, you people who say, today or tomorrow we're going to a certain town, we'll stay there a year, we'll do business, and we'll make a profit. And then he goes on to say, how do you know what tomorrow will bring? You should say, if the Lord wants us to, we'll live here and do this. Otherwise, you're boasting about your own plans, and such boasting is evil. So that's what James is saying. And it's like, there's this pressure to always know what's coming next, always know where the ball's going, but you don't. You don't. And it's really good to have plans and to have options and to stay in communication and prayer with the Lord and have those conversations, express your desires to him. But the reality is, and in this uncertain time, we really don't know what the future holds. So it's a beautiful time to just stay in connection with him because he'll reveal what's the next step. In the past couple weeks, have really enjoyed playing outside with my kids. I loved playing softball growing up, and my dad coached a lot of my teams. I was so competitive. It would be like my dad would work all day, and then he would coach our practice or our game, and then I'd be like, Dad, can you hit me some balls? Like, it's getting dark out, and I'm still like, I don't want to go home. I still want to play. And when it was just my dad and I, and he would hit me like these, he would hit me these long fly balls. And he would always say, when the ball is hit, don't move. Look, watch the ball, and then move your feet. And at the last minute, put your glove up. So oftentimes when you see kids playing, I wish I could coach one day, maybe I will. The first thing they do is move their feet and put their glove up, right? So you move your feet, but you don't even know where the ball's going yet. So oftentimes you move in one direction and now you have to backtrack. And your glove's up in the air, you can't even see where the ball's going because you're blocking your own view. So why do I use this? I love baseball, so I'm just going to try to force a reference. But I say this because if we're following Jesus, what makes us unique is not how many followers we have or if our story is different from other people's stories, because that's exhausting. It's really, are we following him? And how do we know? We watch him. We don't move and run around and put our glove up first. We watch to see where it's going. Because if you're anything like me, when you've done that, when you've just been like, I want to go in this direction, and you're hoping that Christ is going to follow you, if you're anything like me, you waste so much time and then you have to backtrack to get where he wanted you to be in the first place, right? So I'm going to use a softball reference. It's just say, follow the ball. Follow the ball. Your story, just like the disciples, doesn't have to be like super unique and you're the only one who has that story. It can simply be what the disciples did. We're going to follow him. We're going to follow him. That's our story. That's why we know who they are, because they didn't walk away when it got weird or hard. They just followed him. And that's why we know Peter's name, right? That's why we know John's name. That's why we know the name of Thomas or even the name of Judas. That's why we know their names, not because they were super unique, but because they chose to follow the ball, follow Jesus, and not try to go in their own direction. So as we tell our stories, I just wanted to encourage myself as well as you, just try not to take on this pressure of, well, what do I have to say? What is my story? How am I unique? How am I different? Your story is following him. He'll make you unique. He'll make you different. He's already put that inside you. You just follow him and he'll take you to places that you couldn't even have come up with on your own. I hope that that's encouraging today. And I know as things start to change and there's all this uncertainty of when things are going to open, what schools are going to look like, what work is going to look like, what finances look like for everybody, I just want to remind you that you're really not alone and you're altogether beautiful.